It's my privilege to introduce to you our guest, keynote speaker, Tony Hunter. So Tony Hunter is a global strategic foresight consultant and food futurist, food scientist, and speaker specializing in alternative proteins and future food systems. Tony advises global companies and organizations in investing and making strategies to win in this game of new kind of future systems. Tony, welcome, warmly welcome.
Thank you, Soila, and thank you very much to Business Finland for having me here in Helsinki and allowing me to share a few of my insights that I've seen from speaking around the world. So what we're looking at is how Finland can play a leading role in the global food system. The first thing is 11 billion. That's the number of entities we're going to have on the planet in 2050. And I deliberately say entities because besides our 9.7 billion humans, there will be 1.3 billion or more pet cats and dogs eating as much protein as a human. How we feed these entities sustainably, healthily and fairly is the question of our time. So have any of you ever thought, how do we do this? How do we feed all these entities? Have you ever thought, is it an impossible task? How do we do this? Is it an existential threat or an opportunity to defeat the twin tyrannies of global food production? Either way, we're at a once-in-a-generation crossroads. And the decisions we make in the next few years will echo down through the decades. There's quite a few options that people put up for how we should feed our global population. And of course, the obvious one is, well, why don't we just do business as usual? I mean, why don't we just do more of the same? It's worked pretty well in feeding the world from decades away and what we do now. Well, why don't we just have a little look at where we stand? We currently use 50% of all of the arable land on the planet for agriculture. And 2/3 of that is used in some way, shape or form for animal agriculture. If we look at water, as it's just mentioned, 92% of our freshwater withdrawals are for agriculture. The bottom line is that there's not enough arable land or fresh water on the planet to feed everybody on the planet today the way we eat in places like Finland, Australia, UK and the US. And just think about that. There's not enough arable land or fresh water on the planet. Well, maybe I'm wrong. We only use 50% of the arable land. Why don't we just deforest the planet? I would suggest maybe that wouldn't end well. So how far can we push planetary boundaries based on what we've seen? The answer is not very far, if at all. What we need to do is we need to change our paradigm. Our world is not an infinite well of resources. It's more like a self-contained space station. The next one that we'll look at is from the World Resources Institute. They say all we need to do is we just simply get people who eat too much to stop eating so much, and then we'll just send it where people need it. Okay, look, we've been telling people in advanced food system countries, don't eat so much food or you will die. And how well has that worked? I don't think this is going to work any better than that. And of course, there's those that say, all we need to do is reduce waste. If we reduce waste, we grow enough food on the planet, we can just not waste it and yes, we can feed everyone. Well, let's have a look at where our major source of waste is. This is a study from the World Waste Food Report in November 2023 in the UK. And you can see the majority of food waste happens in the home. In the US, it's about 48% of food waste is in the home. Now, how do we reduce that? Well, I think that's going to be a major issue. If you have a look at things in the UK under COVID lockdown, self-reported in-home food waste dropped pretty dramatically, right? People were at home. When lockdowns came off, guess what happened? Went right back up to where it was in 2018. I think that reducing the in-home food waste is going to take generational change. And we simply don't have that amount of time to wait. So what do we do? How do we grow this 50 to 70% more food that we need? We can't just take one of those three options. We need to get it from sources that use less resources and pollute less. In a nutshell, it's about how much food we can grow within planetary boundaries and how much food we're going to need in 2050. So what do? How do we produce this 50 to 70% more food? Well, there is a way out of the maze, there is an answer. And the answer is to reimagine the global food system using technologies. Why technologies? Well, you can't talk about food from farm to fork without talking about technology. They're inextricably linked. And when we look around at these technologies, there's a lot of them. And this is the most exciting time to be in the food industry that I've seen in over 30 years. Every day is an adventure in innovation. But it hasn't always been this way. To me, things started changing around about 2017. Here I am, Monday, the 3rd of July 2017 in Brisbane, Australia. Just sitting down at my first nice hot cup of coffee, and I'm going through my emails and I'm reading them. I'm going like, wow, there's a technology that I hadn't seen before. Look at that technology. How fast is that going? Wow, consumer trends are really changing. And suddenly it hit me. In all my 25 years in the food industry, I had never seen a rate of change like that. So I dug deeper. And the deeper I dug, the more fascinated I became. So over a period of weeks and months of looking at these events and looking at these technologies, I realized that they basically fell into certain technology silos. And then I had to work out which are the most significant silos for these particular products. And after 7 years of obsessive research, I've come to the conclusion that we're approaching the intersection of 5 exponential technologies driven by 3 accelerated technologies that will determine the future of food for decades to come. And we're going to need all of these new technologies. Why? Because we cannot solve today's problems using yesterday's technologies. Technology has solved humanities' problems since the dawn of time, from the invention of the plow to increase our food production, to the invention of antibiotics to cure disease. Technology has solved humanities' problems. It always has, and it always will. That's why my roadmap to the future of food and reimagining the global food system is built on technologies. But it's not a static roadmap. It's more like a GPS which reacts in real time to the changes that are going on in the ever-accelerating world of food. So what are our 5 technologies? They are alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, genomics, the microbiome, and synthetic biology. And just for clarity here, in Finland tend to use cellular agriculture for all 3 of these, As an umbrella term, I've simply broken them down for the purposes of my model into 3 silos. And our 3 accelerator technologies are AI, sensors, and quantum computing, all leading to our exponential food future. Now, you're probably thinking, what on earth is a exponential food future? Well, it's built on 2 key concepts. The first key concept, as I've said, food is now technology. They're inextricably linked. You cannot talk about one without talking about the other. And the second key concept is built on the first, which is that technologies advance exponentially. Who here has heard of Moore's law of computing? Yeah, a few people. Basically says the number of transistors on a computer chip doubles about every 2 years. So after 2 years, you have twice as much, then 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. In less than 15 years, you have over 128 times the computing power that you had before. And that's a great example of exponential change. And in today's world, it is very dangerous to live linearly in this exponential world. What happens is our friend here, as you can see our friend here down the bottom left-hand corner, they think they know what's going on. I know where the future's going to be. I just project along the dotted line where I've been, where I'm going, no problems. And then they look up and they are somewhere completely different to where they thought they were going to be. And that's the exponential shock factor, because our friend here has been thinking linearly. They haven't been thinking exponentially. So that brings me to a great example of exponential change. This is portable computing, 1975 style. Now, I once had hair like that, but that's a whole other story. My friend, Mr. Robert L. Gordon here, has his hands on the world's first portable computer, the IBM 5100. Who would like to guess how much the unit that he has his hand on, just that one unit, how much did that weigh? Give me a number. How many kilos?
15.
15? Another one?
32.
Sorry?
32.
32? Just reverse that and you're right. 23 kilograms. Do not put that on your airline tray table. It will not end well. Now, fully specced up, this state-of-the-art machine in 1975 it cost the princely sum, with the computer, printers, and offline storage, of $19,750 US. Now that is a staggering $115,333 in today's terms. Even more staggering, though, was that this machine, top of the line, fully spec'd, came with 64K of storage. Not megabytes, certainly not gigabytes, 64K of storage. Now, the latest Galaxy Z Fold comes with 10 million times the storage at 1/1000th of the cost, at 1/100th of the weight, and all in less than 50 years. So where do these concepts lead us? Well, food is now technology advancing exponentially. You've probably guessed it. Future of food is exponential. And using our exponential roadmap, we can understand the power of these new technologies to reimagine the global food system. And today, I'm just going to talk about 3 of them. And those 3 are alternative proteins, cellular agriculture, and synthetic biology. And our first technology is alternative proteins, and I'm not going to talk too much about plant-based products, I'm sure you all know that, but I couldn't come to Finland without talking about our friends at Solar Foods. I use them around the world as an example of technology being used to make food. As many of you will know, if not all of you, they use their patented machinery to suck air in. They then separate out the water, the carbon dioxide and the nitrogen. They split the water into hydrogen and oxygen using solar energy. They process the CO2 and the nitrogen, combine it with minerals and some microbes, and then they can actually make food from air. And the key thing, of course, is all of this is without arable land and very little fresh water. Their factory is, of course, only 30 minutes north of Helsinki. Their current factory can make about 160 tonnes of product, but imagine scaling that up in areas where there is no arable land. And where have we got the biggest food problems? Sub-Saharan Africa. Guess who gets the most solar energy on the planet? Sub-Saharan Africa. And Japanese giant Ajinomoto, they have just released products in August based on their Solein product from Solar Foods, their flowering mooncakes and their ice cream sandwich. Now, we're all accustomed to getting our food from plants, right? Lettuces and green things and everything. But how about from a food from plants that we don't normally think to get food from? A company called Our Biome is making food from wood. When we chop down a tree, all we want is that nice straight trunk. We're making lumber, right? We don't want the branches, we don't want the leaves, the bark, we don't want the sawdust. So this company can process that waste product and use that to produce media, growth media, that they can again use to manufacture food products. At the moment, going into aquaculture, but it can also be used for human food as well. And again, the key thing here, very circular, very sustainable. And if we look at other waste products of the food industry, green waste is a very large waste product. And a company called the Leaf Protein Co. in Australia is extracting a protein called rubisco, which is part of photosynthesis, from green leaves. It's been estimated that if we could process all of the green leaves that are currently waste in our food system, we could produce 11 times the protein of all the soy protein made in the world. So that is what we can do with green matter. You can also actually use it on grass. Now, we can't process as humans green leaves because the cellulose in the cell walls, we can't break it down, which is why cows eat grass and we don't, and then we eat the cows. But imagine you can grow grass and turn it into human food and make money from it. And of course, no conversation or coverage here of alternative proteins would be complete without talking about the pets. This is a product called unicorn pate from Wild Earth, and normally cats are obligate carnivores. They have to eat meat to get the amino acid taurine. What these people have done is formulate a complete cat food, including taurine, so cats no longer need to eat meat. Our next technology is cellular agriculture. And you're probably pretty well aware of what's going on in cellular agriculture. Cultivated meat is the most obvious example. And since about 2020, when the Good Meat Company released their nuggets, chicken nuggets in Singapore, and then later on this year, they've also released chicken breasts through the Huber's butcher. So that's a pretty well-known application of cellular agriculture. But you can not only just make products from typical cells. Our friends at Vow Foods in Australia are looking to make something different, something that has never existed before. They have made an animal just made to be delicious. What we have from them is the mythical qualia. And as they say, the qualia has been grown for nothing else other than to be utterly delectable. And again, going back to our friends, the pets, a company called Meatly in the UK, they received earlier this year the OK from regulators to use chicken cultivated meat in pet food. A company called Bene Meat Technologies in Poland has also received EU certification or legislative approval for pet food. So pet food is actually a good in for a lot of these new technologies because the bar is often significantly lower than if you're looking at human food. And don't forget, it's not a small opportunity. 1.3 billion pets on the planet by 2050, at least. Could even be more. And another technology from cellular agriculture is mammary gland agriculture. You can take the stem cells from milk, you can grow miniature mammary glands or mammary cells in suspension, and you can make milk without the animal. And you can do that for any mammal, including humans. So there's a few companies in this space. One is 108 Labs, the other one is a company called BioMilk, and dairy giant Danone has just invested $2 million in Israeli company Wilk to manufacture components for infant formula. So is that the start of a signal of change in how infant formula is going to be based, not on dairy milk, but on human milk? Because what is the best milk for humans? It's not dairy milk. Dairy milk is for calves. Human milk. And let me see, who here likes chocolate? Speaking to Lily yesterday, and she said, yes, the candy range in Finland is enormous, so lots of Finns love technology. Well, I hate to tell you, your chocolate is under threat. Yields in West Africa are going down. Pollination rates are down. Diseases, lack of labour. Our chocolate is under threat. Fortunately, our friends at California Cultured are using cacao plant cells, growing them in huge bioreactors to manufacture chocolate components. They have just signed a 10-year agreement with Japanese giant Meiji to supply them with cacao powder. Our friends at VTT are also active in this space as well. So that is a huge opportunity for a market. If anyone's seen, you've seen the price of chocolate go up? Okay, I think supporting one of these technologies should be one of the first things government should do. There will be no opposition to saving our chocolate. Our last technology is synthetic biology, and that often involves inserting the gene for a particular compound that you want into an organism, a living organism. You grow that organism, and then you take the component that you want. You filter it out, purify it. So a good example of that is a company called Perfect Day in the US. They've inserted the gene for whey protein into a yeast. They grow the yeast, extract the whey protein, and that can be used for all sorts of products like cream cheeses, ice cream, sports nutrition drinks, all sorts of things. And another technology that I love in synthetic biology is plant molecular farming, or as I like to call it, growing animals in plants. Well, maybe not the whole animal, maybe just a little bit of the animal. We have a company here, Orf Genetics, out of Iceland, and they are growing human growth factors and growth factors for making our cultivated meat in barley. And then we have a company called Nobel Foods, and also known as Alpine Bio. They have inserted the gene for casein into soybeans. They process the soybeans, they take out the casein, and the rest can just be used as normal soy. Obviously careful for contaminants and everything, but basically you can use that to make cheese that has that lovely stretchiness that we all love, but is so hard to get without animal proteins. And last but not least, we need to look at what's going on at the agricultural level. At the agricultural level, we have a company called Pivot Bio, and they have a genetically engineered soil bacteria, a microbiome, that can either be sprayed on seeds or sprayed on the ground, and it reduces nitrogen usage by over 40 kilos per hectare. Now you can imagine with all of the problems that we've had sourcing nitrogen under COVID and the Russia-Ukraine war, that their product is extremely popular. They have sold out every year they've been in business, even before COVID. So that is a massive advantage in reducing resource usage. So that brings us to our accelerators. Now, the technology we've looked at so far barely scratch the surface of what's out there or what's in the pipeline. But they're going to be accelerated even more by our three accelerators: AI, sensors, and quantum computing. So what could the AI of the future look like?
Wake up, Daddy Sean. Welcome home, son.
That is an AI called Jarvis, just a rather very intelligent system from the Marvel Universe and Iron Man. That is Tony Stark's personal AI. It runs his home. It runs his diary. It acts as a problem solver, and so much more. Now, until recently, something like this, an easily usable AI, seemed like it was decades away, a fantasy. And then suddenly, like all exponential technologies, AI jumped onto the scene in the form of ChatGPT. Released on the 30th of November 2022, within 5 days, it had over 1 million users, the highest uptake of any comparable technology that we've ever seen. And the world would never be the same again. And just to be clear, we're not talking about traditional AI, with its nice, neat tables of data, where the output of the AI is determined by explicit human programming. We're talking about generative AI, where the AI and its output, it learns from the data it's trained on, finds patterns, and produces novel output. And it's these game-changing novel insights, often from huge databases the human mind can barely comprehend, that are going to accelerate our technologies. And so turn now to, okay, what does that mean though in real life for the food industry? I mean, it's going to benefit from the usual things like supply chain optimizations and customer service. The big change is going to be in R&D and new product development, NPD. Welcome to your new R&D team. Okay, apologies to any R&D or NPD people in the room. It's not probably going to be that way, but it will look something like this, where if you don't have an AI as part of your strategy, as part of your research, you're going to fall increasingly further behind. And if it's not there in the next 6 to 12 months, you may find yourself so far behind, you'll be like our friend in the graph. You think you're there, and the reality is up there somewhere. So what we might end up with, though, is what I'm calling Chat NPD. And a good example of that is a company called Vivicola out of Switzerland. They asked ChatGPT, give me a vegan craft soda with proven health benefits. And yes, it came up with a formulation using the Haskap berry. Not well known down under, I can tell you. And then they said, okay, I need a name. And they said, okay, it came up with Vivinova. I said, great, I've got a name now, Vivinova. They tried the formulation, they mixed all the ingredients together and everything. As you can see, our friend there stirring everything together. And like most product development people, I've got to say, and I say this having been in product development, he loved his own product. Who doesn't love their own product, right? But they tried it with some other people, and they all thought it was pretty good as well. I'm sure they tweaked things. Then they said, we need a label. So they went to Midjourney in the Unreal 3D engine, and they asked, give me a label. It gave them a label. So now they have the formulation, the name, the label, and they say that this took them 2 days. Now, even if you say that's 2 days' worth of work over several weeks or a month, that is still phenomenal. And it may be an outlier, it might not be typical, but it's a signal of what's possible using things like generative AI. And just recently been released is a generative AI trained on publicly available scientific data, not just as a chat GPT. So that's what it can do for industry. But if you look at it in a broader sense, it can also contribute greatly to sustainability, because it can find these game-changing insights and it can satisfy all stakeholders, those who are looking for sustainability, price, taste and other things, and come up with unusual combinations we might not have thought of. Now, it still needs human intervention, right? As we know, it hallucinates and does things. But there are companies working on that. And one day it will be reliable. And let's not confuse artificial intelligence with artificial wisdom. So what we've got at the moment is some artificial intelligence. So we've covered a lot of ground, and the key thing to remember though is that all of these technologies are science fact, not science fiction. Some of them are here right now with products, some will take years, some may take decades to come to fruition, but they're all here right now. And in case you're thinking, Tony, that's a bit far-fetched, remember our friend? 10 million times the storage, at 1/1000th of the cost, at 1/100th of the weight, all in less than 15 years. It really is true to say that today's reality was yesterday's science fiction. So the key with all of these technologies is that they enable us to create a healthier planet, and they do that by using less resources, polluting less, and overcoming some of the problems that we know we have with the global food system. And it can do that by shortening supply chains. If you have siloed localised production, and that reduces the supply chain and reduces supply chain wastage. Reducing the supply chain and siloing that product can also mean that you have greater food sovereignty versus food security. Finland and many countries are food secure. You can buy whatever you like till someone won't sell it to you. Then you need to fall back on food sovereignty, growing enough food for your own country without having to rely on outside sources. And the last but not least is that these technologies reduce our reliance on those twin tyrannies of food production, arable land and fresh water. If we can decouple a significant portion of our global food system from those twin tyrannies, we can feed the global population sustainably within planetary boundaries, even with our 11 billion people on the planet. And that brings us back to our crossroads. What option shall we choose? I mean, we can do more than one thing at once, right? But what should be our primary option? What should be our number one option? It should be to reimagine the global food system using technologies. And we can use our roadmap to do that. So we can react in real time to all the things that are happening in the industry. And again, why do we need all these new technologies? We cannot solve today's problems using yesterday's technologies. So let's go back to our friend here. I don't think we want Finland to be up there. And I think with what I'm seeing, with the opportunities that Finland has got, that's not going to be a problem. And the other countries, many of them will be down there, and Finland will know what's been happening because it's thinking exponentially. So I'd like to propose 5 fundamentals for Finland's future. And the first one is foresight, that we practiced yesterday afternoon in the workshop. Because if you don't know where you are going, any future will take you there. If you're just drifting along, going with the current and the flow, who knows where you'll end up? You need to know your future, and you need to make it happen to the greatest extent you can. And why do we explore the future? We explore the future so we can make the best possible decisions today. We take that future and we backcast back to today to say, if that's the future we want, where we think it's going to be, then this is what we need to do today to ensure that future happens for us rather than the future happening to us. And of course, if you're going to have foresight to tell you what you need to do today, you need a pipeline of innovation. And not only innovation from within the country, but my view is you need to be attracting, as I think you're starting to do already, more and more innovators into Finland. Make Finland the place when people say, where should I base my startup? Finland's right in the top there somewhere. So they're saying, yep, that's where I want to be. That's friendly to me as a startup. It has the infrastructure, has everything I need to make my product happen. And an old one, but a goodie, of course, is regulation. In my view, what's going to happen is the EU, with its current novel foods regulation, is going to see it get increasingly further behind over the next 5 to 10 years. We're seeing a little bit of change in how genetic modification in plants is being viewed, that it should be viewed as more traditional, but it's still taking years and years and years. I mean, the days have been able to take 2-3 years to approve a new technology are gone. We expect a startup to wait 2 years and burn money to see whether their product's going to be approved. They're going to go where they can sell the product and where they can flourish. And that's not necessarily going to be in the EU for a lot of these technologies. And the other one is funding scale-up. We have what I call the scale-up valley of death we talked about yesterday. You have VCs, high-risk appetite. They fund startups because it's big return. You have banks up the other end, low risk appetite. They don't want to take much risk, but they've got lots of money. In the middle is where a lot of startups fail because they cannot get the funding. They're not producing revenue to prove to the banks. The VCs aren't going to put up $100, $200 million maybe, or euros, but in the middle is where government can play a role. If it has the right risk appetite in terms of funding infrastructure to make these products, and it's agile enough to pivot that infrastructure for various technologies, then it can come up, I believe, with a risk profile that suits it and puts it far ahead of most other countries. And the last one, of course, is consumers. And if we're looking towards 2040, who are our consumers of 2040? Well, the people driving the future of food in 2040 are going to be both Gen Z, but don't forget about Gen Alpha, those born 2010 to 2024. It's their attitudes and opinions that will drive the long-term future of food. Now, many of these consumers, future consumers, you can't do too much research on, right? They're children, rightly frowned upon doing too much research on children. But if we look at research on other generations, what we find is if you ask them, are you comfortable with the use of technology in your food? Gen Z, 77% say yes. Gen Y, 67%. Boomers and Xers tied at 58%. So if you were to look at were that trend to continue, then that would mean that our Gen Alphas are going to be highly open to technology being used to make their food, particularly if it addresses their concerns, their opinions on sustainability, animals, and everything else. And these people are not just digital natives, they are technology natives. They've grown up with Spot the Boston Dynamics dancing robot, SpaceX, private corporations shooting rockets into space. We've also got mRNA vaccines. We've got all these things. They're used to technology. I find a world where this generation and some of the Zeds say, listen, I want everything for me personalised, my Spotify, my iTunes, my Netflix, but please, please don't touch my food with technology. I just want to eat, whole foods. That's all I want. Nothing wrong with whole foods. They're great, but I think that that is not necessarily going to be the long-term future of food. So consumer education, scientifically based consumer education is going to be essential in the acceptance, the long-term acceptance of these new technologies. So I believe that if Finland adopts these 5 fundamentals, that they can help create a world of food abundance without breaching planetary boundaries, even with our 11 billion entities. And are they a problem? Well, let's look at it a different way. The world's greatest problems are also the world's greatest opportunities. And government, in conjunction with the food industry, need to seize this opportunity to reimagine the global food system to sustainably, healthily, and fairly feed our growing global population, and in the process, invent the future of our space station planet. Thank you.